We are off and rolling at the NFL Combine. Lots of storylines from both Jeff Hafley and Jon-Eric Sullivan. We're getting into all of it here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Special thank you to each and every one of you who've helped to make the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the world. Yesterday, we heard from the head coach and the general manager of the Miami Dolphins, and Jeff Hafley and Jon-Eric Sullivan, and they did kind of off the beaten path media availability for the local beat writers. They had the podium sessions, which I had a chance to attend and ask both of those guys a couple of questions. We'll get into that and those questions that I asked on today's show. They did the big media tour with the Mike Florios and the Rich Eisens and the whole pomp and circumstance of it, right? And for the Dolphins, it's this great opportunity to trot out amidst the football world, not just introduced to the football world, this pair that is your brain trust and the new leadership that you have in place to run your franchise and try to build a winning organization. And they covered a lot of ground. I think that's first and foremost. I thought about recording this. It's about 6:45 a.m. on Wednesday. I thought about recording this last night. I was just like, man, like let me cool down on all the talking points because they talked on Minka Fitzpatrick. They talked on Tua Tagovailoa. They talked on Malik Willis. They talked on Austin Jackson. They talked on wide receivers in the wide receiver room. They went to a great deal of detail in all of the settings, talking about kind of where this thing is heading. So let's start with, we'll kind of go top down on the roster and start with segment one is just going to be covering kind of the news and summarizing the things that were discussed. The Tua Tagovailoa situation was described as everything is on the table, was the buzz phrase from both Hafley and Sullivan on Tua. And there's other reports that's coming out. Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports had a report that most teams across the league are expecting a post-June 1st designated cut to be the outcome for the Dolphins because they'd really like to find a trade partner, but they're having a hard time doing so. And you knew that was going to be the case, and that's only been compounded by Kirk Cousins was being released on the first day of the league year by the Falcons, right? We might see Kyler Murray get released. Geno Smith might get released, right? Like all of those kinds of players create a more challenging pool for the Dolphins to find a taker for a portion of his salary and give a pick as well. So not a surprise there. And the Dolphins, I think, to their part, are posturing to say, look, everything's on the table, including this might not be a quarterback that's available on the market. I still expect the split to happen. I think all the reporting that's led up to this point indicates that. But I think the Dolphins leadership brass had a nice play to come in and say, look, we're not dismissing any outcomes here. Because if they're going to find any kind of footing to try to facilitate an outcome that's better than just a post-June 1st cut for a guy with a fully guaranteed salary this year, you have to have some level of belief that, well, the Dolphins might keep him. Maybe we're competing with the Dolphins for his services. And it felt to me like that was the purpose and intent behind saying everything is on the table. Now, they weren't shy about having trade talks and there being some level of intrigue of a quarterback who's been a starter and led the league in passing, right? Like Jon-Eric Sullivan kind of readily admitted that. But the fact that they postured the way that they did kind of tells me, hey, look, we need to leave all options on the table because the longer that is the belief, the more opportunity it gives you to maybe catch lightning in a bottle with this situation. The wide receiver room. Jon-Eric Sullivan and part of it was reported as part of the off the beaten path, like the public beat reporter or the private beat reporter meeting. Had good things to say about Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington, but the most notable quote was that we are going to be conscious of trying to get a little bigger in that room. And that was courtesy of Jon-Eric Sullivan, and that, they're not going to have a wide receiver room full of a bunch of 5'9" guys. It's been a complaint for a while, right? And yes, the Dolphins tried Cedric Wilson and Nick Westbrook-Akine, and they tried Chase Claypool, right? It unfortunately didn't work particularly well, but that kind of body type, I think the fact that they've been chasing it is an acknowledgement of, having a productive player in that kind of mold really helps to diversify and can amplify your run game stuff, right? Like at the end of the day, asking Malik Washington, as good as and as tough as he is, to block a defensive end is going to have a little different result than a guy that's 40 pounds heavier, just because 40 pounds of mass is 40 pounds of mass. Offensive tackle, Jon-Eric Sullivan stated again in that private daily beat reporter meeting that Austin Jackson is somebody that they would like to have back. He said, we're not really, we have limited resources as is. And he said that it is something that if it needs to work itself out, he would like Austin to be here, but the way he phrased it made it sound like this is probably this year's pay cut candidate. And Austin's owed $11.5 million in cash. I need to do my legwork. It's kind of been a frantic last 18 hours for me, so I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I want to sit down and look at tackle salaries and figure out, like, where is a dollar amount that would additionally net the Dolphins cap savings that we could feel good about, because I do like Austin, and I can see Austin being a productive player. It's just the durability. You can't have the level of commitment that they currently have from a cash and from a dependability standpoint. You can't have all those eggs in that basket. It's too high leverage of a position for a guy that the body of work has been a pain point, right? Minka Fitzpatrick, Jon-Eric Sullivan put him in the same bucket as Tua Tagovailoa in the everything is on the table standpoint of I'm sure they will have a much more engaged market for Minka Fitzpatrick than they would for Tua. And because of that, I do predictively think that he will get traded. But and if you're going to have trade conversations and you're trying to maximize your value, how do you do that? You put as much value on the players you can. And part of that value is us saying, hey, we might want to keep him too, depending on the offers. And we're ready to move forward with keeping him if that's the case. So a little bit of the posturing, public posturing game and messaging, and it'll be interesting to see as we get a couple of seasons with this group to kind of get a feel for how they go about their business and then what corresponding like actual actions happen. And I think we're in the getting to know you phase with this group of football leadership. So I'm cataloging all these things, and then I want to see, okay, what's the end result with Austin Jackson? What's the end result with Minka Fitzpatrick? What's the end result with Tua Tagovailoa? What's the end result with who they bring into the wide receiver room? That's some of the newsy stuff that went down. Now, they both these guys had podium availabilities. I got 2 questions for Jon-Eric Sullivan, and I had a question for Jeff Hafley. We're going to cover those next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like confetti, phrase, fruity rainbow, or cotton candy. There is something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. I've got my number 1 pick for the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft, and it is cherry, the bold cherry flavor, sweet with a light tart edge, classic red fruit profile, bright, punchy taste, clean, slightly tangy finish. But do not sleep on grape. I'm a big fan of grape as well. The soft, rounded sweetness, smooth, almost syrup-like fruit profile is a nice change of pace from the boldness of the cherry. 5-hour energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar as well, so you don't have to drink your calories. Find your new favorite flavor of 5-hour energy shots available online at 5 Hour Energy, or at Amazon.com. Jon-Eric Sullivan's podium. It was interesting and it was fun to hear him go through the car wash. I was talking with Jordan Reed of ESPN, who I used to work with at Draft Network for a couple years, and we were chit-chatting yesterday in the media room. And he's like, yeah, I got to go down to the car wash, which is Radio Row. You go down and it's table to table to table to table to table, and you got it stacked up, and you go through it once, and then you've hit everybody there with your commentary, and then you're done, right? And the car wash, the media car wash for the executives is a little different, but one of the first things he did, I don't know if he did the beat reporter private meeting before or after his podium, but I know he did the podium, and then he did the car wash and like the big media Radio Row with Rich Eisen and all that stuff. And hearing some of the same things with the same phrases being talked about, I appreciated the consistency of the messaging, right? Everything is on the table, right? The way he talked about Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle and say, I want these guys here. Never say never, but I'm not shopping those guys. I want those guys to be a part of the future here, right? Like those are things that were set by Jon-Eric Sullivan. So those are the hits, right? Like those are the popular buzzy questions. And I knew if I had a chance to ask questions for Sully, the first one that I was interested in is whether or not the change from a single team in Green Bay to a new team in Miami mid-draft cycle was a challenge. And, he's never had a team change. He's been with the Packers his entire career. He's never changed teams, let alone change teams in January, which is almost the halfway point of a draft process. And then, what are the challenges that come with that change, and how do you mitigate them? So that was one of the two questions that I asked Sully. And the other one was about what he thought was the most valuable part of the NFL Combine. So I have both of the clips with his answers. We'll play them here on the show. Videos courtesy of the Miami Dolphins and their YouTube channel of the broadcast or the stream or the posting of the press conference videos. We'll give him credit here on the YouTube channel, but I wanted to give him verbal acknowledgement as well. I did have like grainy cell phone footage ones that I shot. But I figured the audio quality would probably be a lot better if it wasn't my phone in the scrum and we took the broadcast or the posting from the team. So video credit to the Miami Dolphins, audio credit to the Miami Dolphins. But I'm going to play the first of the two questions I had with Jon-Eric Sullivan. We'll talk a little bit about it.
Gotcha. Sure. I think you just have to set a standard and an expectation as you move through. Like, part of my job, if you get away from the roster for a second, part of my job as we move down the road is to be very clear in the way that I communicate with our personnel staff going through the free agency window, the draft window. Make sure they understand their roles and their responsibilities, and then sit back and watch them work. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What potential changes do we need? I will say, to this point, I've been very pleased. I thought they did a wonderful job in draft meetings. I thought their background on players was very thorough. I did not see anybody in that room who did not have a deep passion and care for what they were doing, which was good to see.
So what I love about the answer is the way in which Sully kind of put himself at the forefront of the conversation, right? And accountability, whether it's player accountability or accountability within the building or the general manager and how accountable he is because of he's shopping for somebody else. Those are all talking points that have been like big talking points around the Dolphins the last couple of years. So for me to ask a question, what are the risks of a change, and how do you mitigate the risks of changing scouting staffs? The answer directly going, it's on me and it's my job to create a standard and an expectation and communicate clearly, I love it. And that's not like, if you've been listening to the program beyond 2026, you've known that Jon-Eric Sullivan, back to the fall, was kind of my preferred pick for general manager. So you're probably not surprised that I'm like, oh, I really like this answer from Sully, right? But that was the part of it that stood out the most to me. And you see and hear that in a lot of the messaging that these guys have on a lot of different levels. It's as the leadership of the team, this talking point starts with me. I need to do this. I need to make sure I'm doing this so that we can be successful. And I think that is a really nice breath of fresh air from what we have been predisposed to, especially with a Dolphins general manager at the Combine, which I've been coming to the Combine for almost 10 years now, and I've never heard a Dolphins general manager speak at the Combine because he wouldn't do the public podium sessions. That in and of itself, and the level of transparency that's given, and then the fact that he goes and plays the hits and goes around Radio Row and does the media availabilities, and the messaging is the same. It creates a consistent message with clear communication, with accountability, and you're establishing in the media that same thing that he's talking about with his scouts, of you have to create a standard, right? There's a created standard of transparency and conviction in what you're doing. And the consistency of the messaging of it makes it very easy to believe that this is going to be something that's followed through on. That was not my only question for Sully. I did also ask him about the Combine itself and what he felt the most valuable part of the Combine itself was for him as an executive. Here's what he has said.
I think getting to know the kids. I mean, obviously, look, all of it's important. I mean, all of it's important. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be here. I think when you get a chance to watch these guys interact with, I say teammates, the guys that they're at the Combine with, when you get to see how they compete in the drills, obviously the metrics, how they test athletically. And then when you get to sit in a room and interview them and see how they articulate themselves and get a feel for them, ask them what's important to them. What do they want to accomplish when this is all said and done? The things that they say back to you, it allows you to get a look under the hood. What do they prioritize? Is it winning? Is it things that are more me and I, or is it about the team? Those are the things that, as we build this out in Miami, we want culture guys. We want guys that prioritize winning football games over individual success, if that makes sense. So those are the things that I'm looking for.
Love the fact that you get a little bit of perspective there from Sully on like meeting with a prospect, and they meet with a ton of prospects this week. But to know what some of the questions are and what kinds of answers they're looking for can further help. Again, we're in the getting to know you phase with this group. Getting to know what kinds of players, when you listen to prospects talk and hear them talk, knowing what are the kinds of buzzwords or what are the kinds of phrases or what are the kinds of mentalities that stand out. And that's kind of the scavenger hunt now as we go. And I got to go down and I got to do press conference podiums for players with linebackers and defensive linemen here in about an hour. It's about 7 a.m. right now. The first one starts in an hour, right? So that's now our job as we listen to the players is, okay, we got a little bit of a peek under the hood on what kinds of questions they're asking and the tone of some of those questions. Now let's go see who we can find that maybe stand out in that regard above their peers in this setting at the Combine and see who pops. Had a chance to talk to Jeff Hafley as well. He cooked me a little bit. We're talking about on the inside of the break, which probably should have been the tease at the top of the show, but oh well. We'll talk about that next. Make sure you guys stick with us. As the new year gets going, People are trying to figure out ways to simplify their routines. Dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan can make a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, whether that's a 30-minute recipe, an oven-ready tray, or quick lunches. And there's over 30 weekly options available, including family-sized meals and other dietary choices. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. You must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert. Workplace chaos. Not quite like combine chaos, but workplace chaos. Deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still vacant. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for in skills, experience, and location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate falls into your lap. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you guys, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of our show get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. So Jeff Hafley didn't get too into the weeds on like the X's and the O's, but you listen to him talk and all his media stops. And I'm kind of combining the talking point because I heard it a little bit in the podium and I heard it a little bit with Rich Eisen. Kind of the defensive philosophy. It's going to be really intriguing to see how they take this foundation of young players that they have up front. Chop Robinson, Kenneth Grant, Jordan Phillips, Zeke Biggers, Zach Sealer's a player who's under contract, Jordan Brooks. I'm going to stop myself because I just said the name Jordan Brooks and this fired me up. He was on with, was it Mike Florio with a 101? And Mike Florio asked him about when the Dolphins played the Packers in Thanksgiving. After the game, Jordan Brooks called the team soft. What's your reaction, really, is what Hafley said. And Hafley said, it makes my skin crawl. And he talked about how that's Jordan to a T. He talked about how it probably makes Jordan's skin crawl more than it makes his skin crawl. And their whole process moving forward is to find more players like Jordan Brooks is that will not stand to allow that to happen. And that one fired me up. And he said, we've got more guys than that. We've got a foundation and players that are like that, but we need more of them. And everybody that we're looking for moving forward has to share that. And that got me going a little bit because we spent the offseason blueprint last year was all about finding, we need more dogs, right? And we'll see which ones they have as the young guys that came in last offseason continue to mature. But that will be a talking point again on the blueprint this year around for the simulated offseason. So Jeff Hafley talked about, kind of his first year in Green Bay. They had big physical run stuffer types. Teddarrell Slayton and Kenny Clark in the middle of their defense. And they played a certain kind of front spacing that way. And then he talked about how they lose Slayton in free agency. Kenny Clark gets traded 2 weeks before the season, and in comes Micah Parsons. And they, on the fly, 2 weeks before the season starts, have to kind of undo a lot of what they had been installing all throughout the offseason. And then people got hurt, and they had to change it again. Right? And that's when you saw kind of the challenges that Green Bay had towards the end of the year when Slayton or when Parsons goes down and when Devontae Wyatt goes down, and now you're changing front mechanics because you have to, because you don't have the horses to do what you changed to after you had installed, but then you lost those guys. Like, it gives some nice context as far as like the journey that a coach goes on, right? But he talked about wanting to play with even front personnel, odd front spacing, and from odd front personnel, even front spacing, having that versatility. So I asked Coach Hafley at the press conference with the podium, what's more important to having front and scheme diverse players in your system? Is it the football traits, or is it the physical traits, or is it the football intelligence? And he had some fun with the answer, and he got me a little bit. But I thought he actually did give a very insightful answer as far as the process of getting guys to be position and alignment diverse football players. So here's Coach Jeff Hafley.
Well, you got to have the physical tools because, I mean, I have the football IQ to do it, but there's no way I could ever play, right? So you got to have, and I'm joking. Well, no, I really don't have I'm kind of not joking, but you have to have the physical tools to have the ability to play, right? Then to play multiple positions is hard. I mean, even what we asked some guys to do in Green Bay to move around, as I watched the tape, there's times when we might have overdone that a little bit, and then there's other guys who no problem. So you do need the football IQ, especially if you're going to ask somebody to do it early in their career. It's probably easier to do it later as they get older and they have more experience at one position. But you don't want to take somebody early and spread them too thin, because then they're not going to be good at anything.
Okay. Think of a couple of cross-trained offensive linemen that this could be applicable to for the history of the Dolphins organization, right? There's a few names that come to mind for me there in that regard. So that answer, the last part of that answer stood out to me because of the scars that we carry as Dolphins fans. Again, there's also an accountability element. He's talking about, and in this press conference, he's also asked about like Green Bay and closing some games versus not closing some games. He's like, you got to look back whether you win or lose and explore those things. And there were times where we didn't execute, but there's also times where I needed to call a better play. So him saying I needed to call a better play, and him saying we probably asked some guys to move around a little bit too much in retrospect in Green Bay. It's a self-awareness and an accountability, right? That's again, it's the common theme and messaging that we get from Sullivan that we also hear from Hafley. I just appreciate kind of the transparency of it and the honesty of it and the willingness to say that and the comfort to say that. It's a nice kind of clue, I think, to maybe if you're projecting guys to the Dolphins in the draft. That's not to say they won't care about that position flex, but they better have a landing spot early based on that answer. If they can't fill one immediate role right off the jump, and they're a little bit of a tweener, or they're a little bit of a maybe he does this and maybe he does that, and we can have him do both of these things. If you don't have a certain baseline at either one of the things, it sounds like it might hurt their standing in Miami's evaluation, just based off of that answer from Jeff Hafley. And again, we're in the getting to know you phase, so we'll see what kind of actions follow these information gathering opportunities that we have. But that was my day yesterday. Today's prospects. We'll do some content. Well, obviously, there's going to be a lot of stuff written up at A to Z. They had us drinking through a fire hose yesterday with all the talking points and stuff. So we'll do some content on all that kind of stuff. And I hope you will come back and see us again soon. I'm here in Indy all week. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in. You're on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all again soon. Fins up.